Thanks for notes. You're wearing them. All right.
Yes, right. All you had to do was
Wow, that doesn't look all that bad, but always wearing this frame.
So you're telling us you're a serial killer?
The frames that when you see criminals like in jail, you're like, you should be in jail. It seems to be too smart to have done that. So I think if they can make.
I think you look like Bull. Bull is a guy on TV in the show. And it's a show about they do.
The jury.
The jury guy, yeah, he's the next jury.
But they make you look smarter.
I think that was the back-ended insult.
I'm just concerned. I'm driving. I don't know if I should be driving down the road.
He was already here, I counted him. All right, Jim. Lots of pictures.
What is it? Did we kill some trees?
federal insurance rate.
Is that the new one? That map, is that the new flood plan map, or we haven't got that?
Yeah, they're preliminary, they were just issued in September, so we're going through that process. Public gate process, yeah.
Cool. Ready? Two. Sandy, I owe you flowers.
I hear.
Somebody ratted me out. I don't even know.
Mayor, everybody ratted you out.
Did they?
Thank you.
I let my dog off leash.
Oh, would be, huh? Actually, I forgot about it.
Everybody except Carol ratted you out.
Oh, I didn't see your face on. She's still on the board.
She was.
But you cleaned it up.
All right, let's go ahead and start at 7 o'clock. We have a full house tonight. We're going to ask all of you to be patient as we work through tonight's public invited to be heard. For those of you at home, yeah, I can see there's nobody here except, I'm guessing, one or two. All right, let's go ahead and start with roll call. Welcome back, Ms. Gomez.
Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Councilmember Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Here. Rodriguez.
Here.
Water.
All right, let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Could I get the first call invited to be heard from the back? Hold on 1 second, sir. 1 second. 1 second. Right. Thanks. Oh. Just one. Yep. You for the record, we took a poll. Bonnie Finley won. There's one public invited to be heard. All right. So let's go ahead. You've got 3 minutes, sir. The time is yours. If you could say your name. Real quick. It's only one. It's 3 minutes. I was just excited. Go ahead, sir. If you could say your name and address. You're already down here. Could you turn on your microphone, please? There we go. Oh, I made a mistake. There's two people on the agenda.
All right, Jason Martinez, 1625 Otis Drive. Just wanted to come in and share with the council. First off, Mayor Bagley, council, thank you for having me tonight. Share some information about an opportunity for citizens of Longmont to get involved with a community association. I'm the public relations officer for Chapter 36 here in Colorado. We've had some fundraisers throughout the year to go ahead and raise some money for troop boxes, to go ahead and send troop boxes overseas. We've already done that part. What I'm looking for now is I need community members who are willing to step up and give us names of troops overseas so that we could send that over there to them. I've emailed some information to you, Mayor, about that with my contact information. Please feel free to pass that on to anyone, as well as me sharing tonight. I could be emailed directly at, my email address is token@cvma3-6.org.
Can you say that one more time?
Yep, that is token, TOKEN, at cvma3-6.org. And we'd love anybody that we can, as many troop boxes as we can. We got a good number of, or a good amount of dollars to spend and send that stuff overseas. We do have some within our organization that we could send those over, but getting the community involved as well and getting our name out there in the community, we'd love to have the city of Longmont involved as well. So
Let us know when you ride.
perfect, will do.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. All right. Strider Benston, number 2.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. I know we got a city election coming up that'll be very interesting. Is this, oh, here we go. Interesting. I don't want to bore you with internationalist stuff, but this thing just this week, it's another of the agent of chaos in the grand distraction machine. But there's a possibility that our president began World War III last week. Things have been going on for quite a while, and the potential genocide against the Kurds that was invited by our president could be overwhelming. Already, and I'm no fan of either Russian or American imperialism, but once they pulled U.S. troops back, they were filled in by Russians and Assad Syrians, so you know that. But look at the Kurds. The Kurds have been living there for the last 2,500 years, probably all the way since Cyrus of Persia. And they were the ones who defeated ISIS. And now Trump and Erdogan seem to be creating ISIS again. Let me tell you one thing that happened 900 years ago. There was the pre-ISIS, it was called the Assassins. And they ruled that territory for about 50 or 90 years. Who defeated them? The Kurds. Who were the Kurds that defeated them? It was Saladin's grandfather. Came from Kurdistan, came down and was able to get rid of the assassins at that time. They claimed to be religious, but it was just a death cult like ISIS. And then they went on and kind of went through Palestine and settled in Egypt. And the grandson of the general was Saladin, who came in when the first crusade, the Franks or Christians, whatever you call them, they killed everybody when they came into Jerusalem. They killed the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, the Yazidis, the Nestorians, whatever. When Saladin came through 90 years later, he re-brought the previous settlers back in, and Jerusalem had been pretty much an international city for the last 900 years. But it was the Kurds who defeated the first ISIS, called the Assassins, and then they defeated the current ISIS, And now we seem to be starting up ISIS again. Let's pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. All right, that's it for public invited to be heard this evening. Let's move on to motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items. Dr. Waters?
Mayor Bagley, thank you. This is not about an agenda item, and it probably pales in comparison to what we just heard from Strider, but everybody read the election guide on Sunday and the summary of ballot question 3B?
I did not.
So here's how it reads. And the reason I'm reading it, I know there's going to be a retraction in the paper tomorrow, but if there's visibility that this meeting gets, I think people ought to hear this as well. What people would have read on Sunday is that the debt would be paid off by increasing Longmont's sales and use tax from 3.53% to 3.71, which is correct. It goes on to say equating to $1.08 increase on every $10 purchase, which would be a 10.8% increase in our sales tax rate, which is obviously, I don't know how many, exponentially, maybe 100 times, a factor of 100 times more than the actual sales tax. So that got pretty wide distribution on Sunday. It's my understanding there's going to be a correction printed tomorrow. But if anybody's listening to this broadcast or to this program or this meeting tonight, or watches it on YouTube or wherever they're going to access it, people need to understand this was dead wrong by a factor of, I think, 100 times.
Actually, no. 100 times or 1,000 times? Okay, yeah, 1,000 times. Yeah, 1,000 times. So it's 18 cents for every $100 rather than $1.80 for 100 or $1.80 for 10. So I mean, it's, yeah, that's 1,000 times. So I hope it's a prominent retraction, but we'll see what they do. All right, nothing else on the agenda. Let's move on. I mean, not on the agenda, but no one else is in the queue to add agenda items. Yes, we're adjourned. All right, are there any special reports or presentations, or just the ones that are currently on the study session items?
Sandy has to go over the Climate Action Committee, the task force real quick,
Okay.
based on the conversation, so it'll take
All right,
a couple
sure.
of minutes.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. At your last meeting, when you proposed the climate emergency resolution, one of the things was to convene a task force. Your direction was for the city manager's office to bring back a proposal for the task force in the process. And so Lisa Noblock, I know, sent you an email with a suggestion of what that might look like. I'd like to go through it really quickly, and if you all approve, then we'll move forward. Essentially, what we are talking about is the makeup of the task force would have 14 folks, 14 voting members, as well as a few people that would serve as subject matter experts. That would include 1 to 2 people from City Council, 8 residents, 4 community partners, and we would like to reserve the right that if we don't end up filling the community partners from the open enrollment process, that we're able to ask some folks to appoint people for those 4 slots, as well as the 3 technical advisors, and those would be non-voting members. So the process is, the application is already open. We are using the same application as the boards and commission process for the city clerk. So it's on the city clerk's website. You just choose the Climate Action Task Force as what you're interested in. We assumed that since this is a task force and not a board, that the restriction of being on only one board or commission doesn't play here, because you're talking about a limited time task force. And the applications will be open until October 30th. At that point, we'll gather a team of somebody appointed by the city manager, Councilmember Martin, and Lisa Knobloch, which was part of one of the motions that you made during that resolution, to make a recommendation for who would be on the task force, then bring that back to the city council for approval. That's the process we're looking at. If the council approves of that process, then we will certainly continue.
Mayor Pro Tem.
This sounds pretty reasonable to me. I would like it looks to me that when you say the tech advisors would be from staff, meaning from sustainability planning and LPC, and then PRPA, and then just transition partners, that's 5 people.
Sorry, it's the technical, let's see here, 14 voting members, 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all non-voting members. They're all technical advisors. So yes, you're right, there would be 5
people from staff.
Well,
I actually
3 from City of Longmont staff, 1 from PRPA, and 1 from the Just Transition Group. So 5 that are non-voting technical advisors.
Okay, but
Correct.
I would actually like our staff to be able to have a vote, since this is possibly going to be using city money. And it seems to me that it would be good for the city staff to have a vote.
For the 3 city staff to vote?
Yes.
Okay.
I also think that we are rushing this. I know that, this is a climate emergency, but it seems to me that we could leave it open for at least a month instead of just 2 weeks. And I would like to do that. I would move that we keep it open for 4 weeks. Do I have a second?
It's been moved and seconded, therefore we can move on to debate. There's nobody in the queue. I don't care how long we keep it open.
Yeah,
I just, as
don't
soon as
wanna
we get
rush it.
a qualified group.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't get a qualified group in 30 days, I say we keep it over longer. If we get a qualified group in a week, then we get a qualified group. But we have a motion on the table, and how long do we have? We already voted, and we have 120 days,
120
which is
days
4
for the
months.
resolution.
I think we can leave.
Councilmember Martin?
I'm still,
Oh, I'm sorry.
so,
Mayor Pro Tem still has the floor, I'm sorry.
well, okay. The other thing is, I would like this, because it is using staff time, I would like them to have some, suggest some things that they could focus on, which is renewable energy storage, transitioning from single-use plastic to, oh, really? Okay. Renewable energy storage, transitioning from single-use plastic to durable plastics or no plastics, geothermal heating, and how that could be used in in Longmont, reduction of consumption and inequity in things like electric-only vehicles, and eliminating gas lines.
Councilmember Martin?
While I sympathize with the idea of directing the city's agenda to a list of topics, and my list would be very similar to Councilmember Christensen's, but I do think that the reason that we have a citizens task force is to hear their priorities. And so maybe giving them a list of things to work on should be done at a later time, like by the subject matter experts that end up on the committee, or even by the activists who end up on the committee, because they tend to be focused on a different aspect of the thing, which is prioritizing the damage rather than prioritizing the cost. So I'm not for starting them out with a list.
All right, I'm going to cut everybody off. There's people jumping in queue, but I'm going to cut us off because the motion is whether or not we're just going to extend it 30 days. There's no motion about anything else. So comments by Mayor Pro Tem were just comments.
Oh, okay, I thought that was
Yeah.
part of the
No,
motion.
motion is simply as it stands, is are we going to extend it to 30 days rather than 2 weeks? So
Okay.
with that, are there any other comments from council members pertaining to that specific issue?
Yes.
Okay?
Mayor Bagley, I don't know whether I should address your comments about closing it early if we get the right people. I oppose that because someone who is the right person could have thought they had 2 weeks. I think we should set a limit and not start populating the committee before that limit is up. I think it should still be 2 weeks, and so I'm not going to vote for this, although I'm not strongly opposed to extending it to 30 days. It just gives them a full month less to work out of their 120-day things, and that means 90 days really. So I'd rather we could get it done in 2 weeks.
Dr. Waters?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see it move forward, but I have no qualms about whether it's 30 days or whatever. I guess I would make the comment that I would be disappointed if we had a task force that didn't invite every idea for consideration, no matter where it comes from. And certainly the folks who enlist in this are going to bring a bunch of them. But I would think we would cast that net as broadly as we possibly could to get every good idea, and the best ideas will surface as a result of it. So I would think if we had suggestions, we'd all be encouraged to feed them into the process. But I think expedition or urgency is what's called for here, as well as great thinking. And so, I just think we ought to feel pretty compelled to move this forward.
All right, there's nobody left in the queue. I'm going to vote against it, only because I want to keep it 2 weeks so we move along, and then if we don't have enough qualified candidates, then we can extend it another 2 weeks. That's kind of what I really was trying to say. All right, let's go ahead. And by the way, for the record, Councilmember Martin whispered in my ear, that sounds like a good idea. All right, let's go ahead and just clearing the record up. All right, let's go ahead and vote. I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem.
The reason I suggest this is that there are a lot of people in town who are interested in this who haven't even heard of it yet. And if we close it off.
Oops.
Oh, okay. The mayor cut me off. Anyway, the reason I suggest this is because there are a lot of very good people in town who would love to participate, but they haven't even heard this is coming. And so we're really not allowing for very much time to publicize this.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. All right, that passes. Oop, can you throw the results back up? Thank you. That passes 4-3 with Councilmembers Rodriguez, Councilmember Peck, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, and Dr. Waters for, and Councilmembers Finley, myself, and Martin against. So the motion passes. 30 days it is. All right, let's move on to study session items. 5A, supplementing special flood hazard areas under Title 20, floodplain regulations. Jim, time is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley, City Council members. I am Jim Angstadt with Public Works and Natural Resources. This evening, we are going to be talking a little bit about flood mapping. Since after the 2013 flood, the state of Colorado, through the Colorado Water Conservation Board, has been working with FEMA and local communities to update the FIRM maps. That is the flood insurance rate maps. Try to get that one right. I have with me Monica Bordolini, who is our floodplain administrator, senior civil engineer, who will provide a brief presentation to talk about the adoption of the preliminary firms as the best available information.
Jim, good evening, Mayor Bagley and council. So tonight we'll be discussing the new firm maps, long-awaited flood insurance rate maps. So you did good, Jim. Let's see. Oh, back. Never mind, doesn't matter. So first I'm going to start off with some of the things that you've already seen before, just as some reminders of where we were and then where we are now. Of course, it all started with the 2013 flood. Then, as Jim said, then Governor Hickenlooper asked the state legislation to fund new studies for all of the creeks that were affected during the 2013 flood. They called that program the Colorado Hazard Mapping Program, otherwise known as CHAMP, so you've probably heard that term before. And at the same time, we in Longmont started the RSVP project, so this is all going on simultaneously. And I also wanted to remind you that in 2017, Council adopted the draft CHAMP maps and models as best available information through a presentation that Nick Wolfram did. And then in 2018, I did a presentation for his was for St. Vrain Creek, and then I did a presentation for Left Hand Creek in 2018 to adopt those draft CHAMP maps as best available information. So this is where we are now. So the draft CHAMP maps and models were reviewed by FEMA, and they were tweaked a little bit, and those maps and models became the preliminary firms, which were delivered to the city on September 30th. And this is what they look like. And I brought the real things. Where are they? Somewhere. Dale has them. But I wanted to just make a special note that these are the maps that all of the RSVP projects, when we ask for map revisions due to those projects, when they're complete, will be done on these maps. And we're going to be starting that process this year. Those are called LOMR's Letters of Map Revision. The next couple slides are just some comparison maps to show you the differences between what we saw before and what we're seeing now. So this first slide is St. Vrain Creek, and this is a comparison of the old maps, which are the 2012 maps, to the new preliminary firms. This is where we see the most change, is on St. Vrain. We've seen this before. This is the same thing, but for left hand, very little change. The next couple slides are a comparison of the preliminary maps to the draft CHAMP maps that you adopted previously. And this is for St. Vrain again, and the little colored areas are the areas that have either been deleted or added to the new preliminary firm map from the CHAMP map. So those show the changes, positive and negative. And the same thing with left hand. The reason there's two maps on left hand is because...
I'm sorry, there's one question from Council.
Sure.
Councilmember Martin?
Absolutely. Oh, sure, absolutely. The red is removed and the green is added. And the blue is the same.
So, okay, there was some purple on the last map.
Oh, how do I go back? There we go.
Stripy purple.
So those stripy purples right here?
Yeah.
Those are Boulder County properties, and they have elected to adopt a floodway on St. Vrain Creek, which is the middle part of the floodplain, the big part of the most restricted part of the floodplain where the regulations are the strongest or the most restrictive. And they adopted a floodway, but the city has not adopted a floodway yet for St. Vrain Creek, so they show they show all their little pieces of property that are still within the city as those purple striped.
Thank you.
With that purple striped.
Right, Councilmember Peck?
Thank you. Can you explain to me what a floodway is versus what we are doing on the St. Vrain? What does that mean?
Okay, so a floodway is, floodplain is a global term. So this is the floodway, and 100-year. So we map the 100-year and the 500-year. The blue is the 100-year. And then the floodway is the area of the floodplain that is supposed to remain open for the conveyance or the moving part of the flood. So we map that separately, and that's the area that that FEMA has the most restrictive regulations on, is the floodway. But since we're in the middle of RSVP, and eventually our floodplain will be, and floodway will be inside the channel and not outside the channel, we elected to wait to do the floodway until we were done. So that's kind of what the deal is with that. Any other questions? Okay. All righty, so we're already to the end of the slides. So these are just some program pieces of information I wanted you to know, which you may or may not be asked when about the preliminary firms. And the first is that these firms, preliminary firms, are not going to be effective or official until sometime in 2021. It'll easily be 18 months. It could be 24, all depending on how many appeals that there are and how quickly they can be resolved. The second thing is that there will be no change to the requirements for flood insurance until the maps are official. So people have 18 to 24 months, excuse me, to do what they need to do about flood insurance. We will also have two big public meetings to present these maps to the public, which they've seen them before just in the draft champ form. And then we're going to have a few additional meetings for some of those communities that are especially affected. And so we'll do that as well. And we will work in our CRS discount into those meetings. So we'll make sure that anyone who's going to be affected and may be in a situation where they have to get insurance know about the discount, or anybody who already has insurance will make sure that they also know about the discount, make sure they ask for that. And the last thing is that I'll be coming back and ask for, with an ordinance, and ask you to adopt the preliminary firms as best available information, as we did before, so that we'll have those to work with until the new maps are adopted. And that's it.
All right.
More questions?
We had a couple questions during, but I appreciate the questions because they're actually clarification on the actual procedure or the presentation. Are there other questions? Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. So this is my tutorial here. So talk about why we would need an interim ordinance.
Well,
the red text.
The red text is, you've heard this before when I've presented on the draft champ maps, but especially for St. Vrain Creek, because the floodplain is so different than it was in 2012, as new development comes in, we need to make sure that that development is not going to be in the floodplain when they're finished.
So it would be an ordinance to restrict development.
No, not to restrict development, no. But to make sure that if they're going to be building now, that when the maps actually become official, they won't be in the floodplain if they're residential. I mean, but it usually is. So what I'm saying is that if there's a piece of property that's not in the floodplain now, but will be with the new maps, if we let them develop as they normally would when the new maps come out, they'll be in the floodplain, and everybody will have to pay flood insurance.
So what would the ordinance in that case be?
So
Either
that the
enabling
ordinance
or,
in that case would be
restricting, or
we would say, well, we're using the new maps as our official maps in the city of Longmont.
so it would be the ordinance to adopt the interim maps. Got
Right.
it. Okay.
So that
All
I
right.
can use them
Got
and
it.
manage from them officially
All right.
in the interim here.
So is it safe to assume that an appeal in this case would be coming from a property owner who owns property that is going to remain in a flood zone and believes it shouldn't, and that's what would be appealed?
Could be. Now, this has to be a technical appeal. You can't just say, well, I don't like the map,
Yeah.
and I don't like it that it's on my property. It has to, they have to bring technical information.
An engineering
to
study or
FEMA,
something,
a study
yeah.
or something that says that there was a mistake or they misread something or.
Would there be some other reason for an appeal by whoever, person or corporation who owns the property?
They could say that parts of the map aren't shown correctly, that they believe they should be shown differently. And if they can present good technical information from that, then FEMA will review that and consider that. And so then the final maps that come out will include any revisions that they accepted during that time.
So it might be less about my property than methodology or a set of calculations or something like that.
Well, here's an example. So we will have the first LOMR for RSVP, letter of map revision, done for RSVP before these maps become official. So that will change the map on St. Vrain. And when the final maps come out, as long as we get that all approved and adopted through FEMA during this time period that we have, that the preliminaries haven't been adopted yet, the final map that comes out should show the changes that we asked for because of the first part of our SVP. So there'll already be a revision shown, and that's an example of an
That's
appeal,
helpful.
basically.
You know, by the way, I appreciate the attention to acronyms and what those mean.
I know, it's,
From firms to loamers to, right.
I'm reminded of that often.
Well, it would, you know, for something like this, it would be useful to have a little
An acronym
dictionary,
cheat
not
sheet?
dictionary, but like,
Acronym.
yes, vocabulary page or whatever. Last question. The one point, I think we were told that we should anticipate 880 acres of land coming out of the floodplain when we're done with this. Is that still an estimate that's reflective of these maps?
For RSVP?
I see Dale nodding his head.
Yes.
So.
Well, yes, but of course, that won't happen until we get these
Sure, till it's all
loamers
said and done,
through the
yeah.
FEMA process,
Yeah.
and we're only doing one at a time. So this first one will only be for the area downstream of Main Street, and then that very first piece upstream, which we call City Reach 2A.
Yeah.
It'll only be for those pieces, and then we'll do another one.
Sure. But that's still the big picture kind of
But the
estimate.
big picture,
Correct.
yes,
Thank
that's
you.
correct. Mhm.
So I think the big message is this is going to continue to move even after these maps, because as they're continuing to move upstream, we're going to continue to come back with revisions based on the work that we're doing.
Exactly.
Do we need to move that we adopt the study?
No,
So we're
not
good?
yet.
All
This
right.
is just a.
Okay, cool. It just
Study
said
session.
adoption of these studies supports city council. I just wondered, but 2021 it is.
Okay.
Can't wait. All right,
And we'll
thank you.
do that again in 2021.
Great, thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Okay, let's move on to Excel Energy. Our partner is here, and our partners are here.
Mayor Bagley, City Council. My name is Robert Love. I'm Key Account Manager with Longmont Power and Communications. And I'm here to talk to you about the Partners in Energy program with Excel Energy, more specifically the Planning Memorandum of Understanding. LPC and the Sustainability Program is seeking council direction to proceed with participation in Excel Energy's Partner in Energy program through a non-binding Planning Memorandum of Understanding specific for the first phase, the 6-month planning process. Overall, the program's 2 years. What I'm here asking for today is just for us to acknowledge the Memorandum of Understanding and start the planning process to open up talks with Excel and see how we can benefit from this partnership. So what is Partners in Energy? The overall Partners in Energy program is an Excel Energy service that offers tools and resources to help communities better understand their energy use. Excel Energy will match their resources to fit our specific needs while supporting the city's overall sustainability goals. So this is not just a partnership between municipal utilities and Excel. This is also for all communities. Majority of them are served by Excel electricity and gas. We would be the second municipal-owned utility to participate in the program, following Fort Collins. Through this collaboration, Excel would provide data and assistance that will help enhance Longmont's existing programs while expanding the scope of our new programs. We've identified 4 key areas of focus that would benefit from this collaboration. One being commercial benchmarking. Excel has worked with many cities in the past on developing an energy benchmarking program. So they have some tools in place which allow commercial customers to easily import gas data, and we could learn from that practice, develop something that would make it easier for our customers to use. They've offered to participate in educational trainings for our commercial customers on why benchmarking is needed for the city. Second would be the Residential Low Income Energy Efficiency Program, or CARE program. Currently, Excel is our partner behind the scenes on this. They fund around 25% of the program. We would be working with Excel on some marketing and promotion to get the word out about this program to increase participation. Third, we're looking at the Just Transition Plan. So through the Just Transition Plan, we've used all the data that we currently have available to us, electric, water data, high bill complaints, all the internal systems that we have, laid them out throughout the city. With this partnership, Excel would be able to provide us some data of where they've had high program participation through their programs, where they've had no participation. We could overlay those maps essentially and see, okay, they're doing something right in this neighborhood. What can we do? Learn best practices from each other on how to engage participation. Finally, the Sustainable Business Program. Currently, we're looking at electric, water, economic, triple bottom line. If we were able to use gas data and get our participants to take a deep look at their gas data, it would give us a well-rounded program so we could look at all of their energy usage. I want to, as I mentioned earlier, Fort Collins was the first municipal utility to participate in this program with Excel. And I want to bring attention to a program that was developed in 2017, the Multifamily Energy Efficiency Program. Through this program, it was a cost split incentive between Excel and Fort Collins utilities. They were going to multifamily properties, giving them energy assessments, energy advisings on how they could be more sustainable. At that time, they were negotiating installing low flow aerators, shower heads, LEDs, exit signs, and then they had an energy advisor that was on hand to answer any questions. The program had great success. So in 2018, the 4 municipal-owned utilities got with PRPA in one of our DSM meetings and decided to implement the program in all the cities. So in 2018, we had great results from this. 6 properties overall, over 2,000 apartment units were evaluated. Over 1,800 of those participated in direct install measures, where it's LED lighting, low flow shower heads, aerators. And the energy savings resulted in over 800 megawatt hours of energy savings. Through that program alone, that is what allowed us to meet our 1% energy goal 2 years ahead of time. So that's just an example of how another municipal utility has worked and how it's benefited us so far. I'm here today for council to confirm that this opportunity would be beneficial for the city of Longmont. And by opportunity, right now, we're just really discussing the planning memorandum of understanding. If the planning MOU is approved between the city of Longmont and Excel, nothing would be implemented. This would allow us to start working together, looking at our program, seeing where they could help, where we could better serve our customers. And then before anything is implemented, so at the end of this MOU, we would bring it back to the Sustainability Advisory Board and City Council to present our work plan, get your feedback, input, and then move forward with what you approve, go back to the drawing board with changes, or stop it altogether. So this just allows us to open up those lines of communication. And then right now, I'm open up to any questions that you may have.
All right, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Robert, could you go back to slide 5?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Why were only 6 properties involved in the 2018 adoption for Longmont? Are there really only?
No, there are plenty of properties out there. You would be surprised how many people are skeptical of the utility or the city coming to you saying, we would like to work with you, provide you these no-cost upgrades
Uh-huh.
to work with you on an energy plan, there is always a very much of a what's happening, why is this, why are you doing this? And keep in mind, this was not a full 2018 program. This was only, I believe, 5 months, 4 or 5 months, that we
Uh-huh.
had these results. So we have started now doing it in 2019, and now that a lot of this is word of mouth, or you get in with the property manager, they understand you're not in there trying to sell a service, and so other properties participate. So we've had more participation in 2019, but this was over a 4 to 5 month window in 2018.
Okay, thank you. And you said meet our 1% goal, and I'm not sure
It was
I'm alone in not knowing 1% of what to what. So
Okay.
could you elaborate that?
Absolutely. So LPC had a goal through efficiency programs to eliminate 1% or to reduce energy consumption by 1% year over year to be achieved in 2020. We were, depending on our current programs, that has consistently built up to get to that 1% energy reduction goal by 2020. However, this program was brought on late in the game, and it wasn't factored into our portfolio of programs. So that's what made us pass that 1% energy savings. Did that answer your question?
Sort of. This is all energy, including energy used in delivering water, because I keep hearing water in here.
No, this was
electricity
an
only?
LPC internal goal for electricity only.
Okay, so we had a 1% reduction in consumption in 2018 of electricity.
We had over 1%, so it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it was around 1.15%. But when you're looking at the total retail sales, it's a good amount.
Okay. I am skeptical of this because, and you know, I know that our Excel representative for the area is in the audience. I respect his work very much, just saying that to begin with. But we are a city who has just adopted a resolution to essentially become a zero-emission city. We haven't specified a date yet. And so it's hard for me to understand the interests in a corporation that doesn't sell us electricity, does sell us natural gas, wanting to help us wean ourselves away from his product.
Well, that can be kind of a twofold answer there. So Excel Energy does have energy saving goals as far as gas saving goals that apply to our region.
Okay.
And then before we decided to bring this to council, open up the discussions, we made it pretty clear of where the city's going, what our goals are. And so through that initial conversation where we had, everybody at the table acknowledged we're looking to phase out natural gas. We have a 100% renewable goal by 2030. And so we know that that's not just an overnight thing. This will help us both achieve what we're looking to do in the right now with what we have available to us.
Mm-hmm.
So by us conserving energy, they're conserving gas, we're overall lowering greenhouse gas emissions as a whole in the right now.
Yes.
This is in no way meant to hinder any forward progression to what our overall sustainability goals are. And, you know, keep in mind that this is really just the planning side of things. So we just want to see where we can work together, where our goals align, and nothing will be implemented from this until we come back.
So, can I assume then that during the planning phase, we are not going to promote replacement of one natural gas appliance with another natural gas appliance?
Absolutely. So we will not produce any material that will go out to the public with any co-branded material producing one or promoting one program over the other. This is just for us to see if we can align our goals and work together to really help launch and enhance those 4 programs I spoke about earlier.
And if the city wanted to put out communications that did promote one program over another, that is, if the city before the end of this planning period wished to promote electrification specifically, would we be violating this memorandum of understanding by
Not at all.
doing so?
This is it's a non-binding memorandum. So the one we're looking at now is just the planning side of things. However, the city can have its own messaging. So we've identified the 4 programs where we are going to more benefit from the data sharing side of things instead of the promotional and outreach, with the exception of the CARE program.
Okay, and the CARE program means precisely what? I know that Excel contributes something to it, which is a 25%.
Right. So the CARE program is different from Longmont Cares. The
Mhm.
names just happen to
Be the same.
come up around the same time. Basically what it is, so there's an income qualification for the CARE program. What they do, they'll do a full energy audit. They'll assist with upgrading insulation, smart thermostats, furnace tune-ups, direct install measures of LED lightings to really make the home more efficient and reduce that utility cost burden. That is currently cost split between PRPA, LPC, Boulder County, and Excel Energy.
Okay, and it does not involve the installation of gas appliances, new
The
ones.
only time that an appliance like a furnace is replaced, they will look at Energy Star refrigerators and appliances like that. The only time a furnace would be replaced is if there was carbon monoxide leaking into the home. Whether it's an electric or gas furnace, I'm not sure how Colorado Energy Office handles that, but they administer the program for us.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I have now. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Just to help to kind of clarify some of what Councilmember Martin was asking about for me, on this page, on slide 5, what you're showing here that PRPA, I guess, adopted or committed to in the 4 communities that it serves, that was independent of any kind of planning effort that we've done with Excel, or you wouldn't be bringing this proposal. So how is what you're proposing different than what PRPA has already done, started doing in 2018, and I assume is continuing to do now?
So when Fort Collins and Excel Energy approached each other, got together, they were looking to develop a new program implementation, develop a new way to reach residents or a new way to reach multifamily programs. Ours is going to be a little different. Each community, what's in the planning MOU, will be different. Ours is we have our 4 programs in place, or that are coming on in place, and we're looking for the partnership to help us enhance those programs. So we have the skeleton, the framework in place. That's not going to change. We'll still have our mission. We will still go forth with those programs without Excel.
In the 6 properties, 2,004 apartment units, these data points are a reflection of what has already been done that you would like to take to another level or refine?
No, the reason the multifamily program was mentioned is just something that's a benefit that came to Longmont. That program is running fine.
So this is a narrower focus on the multifamily
Absolutely.
units. So the planning effort is broader than this. This is a slice.
This was something Fort Collins had identified in their planning process that they went through and implemented.
Okay.
The second phase.
In the 6-month planning phase, at some point in time, you're going to arrive at a conclusion that there's a go or no go, right? You're going to come back to commit to another 18 months or not.
Yes, sir.
Kind of at this point, do you have pretty clear criteria in your head or collectively in the heads of your team? We'll know to bring this back to the council if. Finish the sentence, if.
If anything does not end up aligning with the goals that the city has, the sustainability.
No, you'll know to bring it back if it aligns with what?
you're leading me, and I'm not sure what you want me to
Well,
say.
if we see this back here, it's because you're going to be satisfied that a threshold's been met, that a criteria's been satisfied, that it's worthy to you bring this back to us.
Absolutely.
I just want to know on the front end, what is that? What are those criteria?
Yeah, so when we
He's learned to understand my questions, I guess.
When we develop these programs, are the ideas of how our partnerships would be. They're going to align with our sustainability goals, and nothing will move forward without approval from council. So if that involves where there needs to be check-ins to see where we're standing, we won't implement anything that is not agreed on by council.
I get that. I thought you have some expectation that this is going to line up in this way, or we won't bring it back.
Oh, I have expectations that out of those 4 programs we aligned, we are going to be able to provide a full offering to our commercial and residential customers. If we're not able to provide that full offering, we could still, there's no need for the partnership. We would move forward.
So 2 other questions, and I'll let you go. The first question is, when you bring that back, you'd be bringing it back with, we would expect to see these kinds of reductions in terms of whether it's the use of natural gas or electricity or water or whatever, these performance measures that we're going to use.
Absolutely. So what we bring back will have KPIs, measurable implementation.
The last question, you made a comment just a minute ago about we've met our conservation 1% reduction goal a year early.
Yes, sir.
But we just raised rates. So for anybody who's listening, why wouldn't we think that the better we get at reducing consumption, the more our rates are going to go up?
So with our 1% load reduction, that if we're dropping 1% per retail sales, say over an average of 3 years, Longmont's continuing to grow and bringing on more load that is tracking that. So we will still continue pushing the energy efficiency through our programs, through our commercial and residential programs. But however, with Longmont growing, bringing on more load, we're kind of just trending right there. We're adding more than we're reducing.
So is the 1% that calculation of total use or on some average across?
It is 1% of the 3-year rolling average of retail sales. So what that is kind of an industry standard of you take your last 3 years of retail sales through come up with your average, and then take your 1% from there, and that's your moving forward. So the 1% does grow with your load growth. It's not taking like a 2016 number and carrying that forward.
Well, I know that part of what we want to do with our new metering system is to reduce our peak use, right? That's what sets the rate. So that peak use is what triggered the rate increase, not total consumption. Is that correct?
Is that fair? That is correct.
So if we could get the peak use down in the summertime and reduce overall consumption by 1% or whatever that number is, then we could see a different trend in terms of rates.
Absolutely.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, to kind of give you an example, when you look at what Fort Collins is doing, because of their industry load, they have a flatter curve, and so they don't have the same peaks that we have. And so what we're trying to do, and when we talked about the AMI work and this other piece, is actually to reduce those peaks, which throws you into another tier of rates.
So the combination of AMI, if we can reduce peak use and this conversation,
and reduction,
we can turn, or at least maintain, if not continue to see increases in rates. Is that fair?
Generally, what I tell folks is what you want to do is flatten your load, because the more you can flatten your load and you don't have those peaks, then that allows you to have that other rate.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. One of the reasons the Sustainability Board wanted to endorse this is exactly what we were just talking about. In order to understand, to really be able to analyze our total energy use, we need to work with Xcel Energy, which produces both, for many municipalities in the state, produces both the electrical and the gas needs. And so they are not particularly threatened by reducing gas needs, they know which way the wind blows. And they know how things are going to change in the future. And I think this is a very smart thing on their part. And this way, if we partner with them on this, we will be able to better analyze our data of our complete energy use so that we can actually do what is it called? The balancing of the load balancing anyway. So anyway, that's one of the reasons, aside from all the benefits of this, which I think are pretty extensive. So anyway, the Sustainability Advisory Board had quite a discussion on this because they, of course, were also somewhat cynical, but Excel has always been a very good community partner, and I'm all for this. I would move that we sign this memo, that we proceed to sign the memo of agreement. Do I have a second? Thanks.
All right, let's vote. Okay. I get it. Are you going to vote against it? All right, Councilmember Martin. All right, Councilmember Martin. Nobody else is in the queue. Go ahead.
Well, maybe I just lied to the mayor because I'm inclined to vote for this. But it hurts. I'm telling you, it hurts. I am suspicious of this program. But I trust the members of the staff and the Sustainability Board to make sensible recommendations. So I'm fundamentally taking it on faith that at least this first step is going to be a benefit to the city. You're going to have to show a serious beneficial plan that doesn't increase greenhouse gas usage to go on past the 6 months. So I wanted to say that, you know, I will support this with extreme reluctance.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I do have some of the reservations that Councilwoman Martin said, but I'm also very curious. I'm going to vote for it because I want to see what you come up with. I want to see what the plan is, and if we don't have this MOU, we won't know that. And if we don't like the plan, we can vote it down. So I'll vote for it.
All right. I'd like to see what you come up with. So let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much.
For the record, if you have never considered running for council, Bobby Love is a politician's name if I have ever heard one.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. The what? I will put your sign in my front yard. Thank you, Robert. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the review of the design standards and construction review of the design standards and construction specifications update.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm Chris Huffer with Public Works and Natural Resources. We are here to talk about public improvement design standards and construction specifications. I do have to warn you, though, I tried talking with my wife about this last night, and my 6-year-old chimed in and said, this is extremely boring. It would be much more exciting with some mermaids and Disney princesses. So I got to tell you that they did not make it into the presentation, but I'm sure they would have made it much better. So tonight, we are introducing to you the proposed changes that we have for our design standards. I do have several members of staff with me tonight. Our standards cover most everything that we do in public works, from water, sewer, drainage, to LPC's work as well. So if you flummox me with any questions, I'm sure they'll be coming to my aid. This is an accumulation of many hours of staff time. Staff has taken this on ourselves. We have not hired an outside consultant to do any of this work. But, this is a accumulation of many hours of staff time. Staff has taken this on ourselves. We have not hired an outside consultant to do any of this work. But, this is a accumulation of many hours of staff time. Staff has taken this on ourselves. We have not hired an outside consultant to do any of this work. But And it's based mostly on the experience that our staff has. We have many experts in the field. Many have been working in their fields for a long time, and they've brought that experience to this update. I want to take a step back and say, why do we have standards and specifications? And this document really guides design and construction, as indicated by its name, so that the city can provide our core services and transportation and utilities to the citizens of Longmont. The main intent of this focus is to to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens as our first and highest goal. By standardizing the way that we do things, allows us to coordinate the construction and operation of extensive roads, trails, water, sewer, and storm drainage. City infrastructure has been constructed by hundreds of different contractors over many years, and our standards allow us to try and make that a cohesive system as one. Last year alone, we had over 24 projects in different parts of the city that were completed over 7 miles of roadway, thousands of feet of water and sewer lines, and countless drainage improvements, as well as electrical. Standards help staff ensure that all new infrastructure is compatible with our systems, as well as the long-term viability of what's constructed. Slide. All of this infrastructure that we have needs to be maintained. We have an asset management program that's implemented by our operations group that has a large budget to try and make sure that everything runs and operates smoothly. It also gives them the ability to respond to emergencies quickly and efficiently if everything is built to a standard. Our standards do also allow for creative design in a manner that we can create an environment that we want to see, from our open space trails to walkability of our downtown areas. All communities face the same challenges for standardizing their infrastructure, and our staff has reviewed many of the communities up and down the Front Range to see what types of things that they're implementing, to make sure that we are not going too far above and beyond and asking too much of contractors and of our infrastructure, but still maintaining good infrastructure that serves the people of Longmont. The standards are really the how of things get built. It's literally the nuts and bolts, in some instances, of how we are going to construct all of our infrastructure. It lays out the ways that we pave our roads, the mixes of concrete. It gets down to the very technical and dry, boring portions of what we do, but it's very important. Our standards also are a legal document that provide the authority for our city engineer to implement all of the regulations and standards that are in the document itself. Also, providing direction for construction has always been an issue, even from the time the Egyptians started building the pyramids. The Greeks built the Acropolis, and Rome built roads. Our history doesn't go back quite that far, but we do have evidences from as early as 1964 of planning and engineering coming together to try and implement some type of standards. The first standards were adopted by council in 1993, and then there were a couple of updates, 2004 and 2002, 2004, and our current standards were updated in 2007 and adopted by council. Our standards do the how, is what I've said before. But the what we build and how we build it and where we build it is all guided by master plans, starting with Envision Longmont. Our comprehensive plan talks about types of uses and where they go. Our development code further defines what happens in those areas. And then such plans as our roadway plan, our parks and open space, wildlife management plan, and sustainability plans all direct how things or where things are to be built and what's to be built, and they interact with the standards continuously and in many different areas. To get to the meat of this, our standards are broken up into 7 different sections, which were provided in your packet. I don't know if you had a chance to read all 400 pages of it or not, but we'll go through it as quickly as we can, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we're going through this. But we'll start with Section 100, which is our general requirements. General requirements, we've done a revamp of this section to lay it out in a more standard reference document type format, where we've got the authority and the authority of the civil engineer broken out, as well as all the normal sections that we have for a standards type document. We've added easement language. Over the many past years in development, we've gotten easements for infrastructure in different ways, either by a plat or by a separate document. A separate document has a lot of information in it about what you can do with your property and how the city would have to restore anything that we do during maintenance. And there's been a disconnect with when easement's been platted, if that language really applies or whatnot. So we've added that into Section 100. So it's the basic language out of our standard easement document from the city attorney's office, so that all the rules apply in the same way. We've also looked at excavation and trenching updates. We've looked at utility separations, looking at minimum distances between all of our utilities as trenching and boring, or as trenching becomes less economical and more boring of utilities happens, separation becomes a much larger issue. So we've set our standards in a way that helps facilitate that, but also gives us leeway and judgment calls on how to get the best installation as possible. One of the other instances is bedding material. For a long time we've required only one single bedding material, CDOT number 8. That's becoming harder and harder to come by, or it's becoming more and more expensive as more construction goes on. So we've added a couple of other bedding, allowable bedding gradations. We've also removed stormwater management. In 2007, stormwater management was handled by Public Works. It's now been separated out with our NPDS permit, and our stormwater permitting is now all under environmental services, and all the rules come from Title 14, our stormwater code in the municipal code. Section 200 is our transportation. There were several updates in this area. We came in line with AASHTO and CDOT standards for horizontal and vertical layout of roadways, for site triangles and so forth. We've also included structural elements into Section 200, which are bridges, underpass, sidewalk, bikeways, and side paths. Those used to be in Section 600, which is the landscaping. We felt it fit better with our transportation area. We've also looked at design speeds. Envision Longmont has created 4 road classifications. We've looked at the use on those roadways and set our design speeds accordingly for those. I also mentioned clear zone requirements and site triangles before. We've also added guidance for alleys and maintenance access. We have several instances where we require all-weather access, but we've never defined that. So now we've got standards for those in Section 200. One design standard that seems fairly minimal but has somewhat of an impact on almost every project. We set our minimum street slopes at 0.5%, or which is a very, very flat slope. And we found that over time, even though if they can be constructed correctly, with differential movement, expansion, subtraction, grades, that we get a lot of ponding in the streets that are at 0.5%. So we've raised our minimum to 0.7 to help address that, so that even in construction, if we don't quite hit the 0.7, we have a little bit of buffer and play in there to, and things will still function. And then lastly, we've looked at bicycle facilities. And we've standardized on some striping. Now all of our collectors and arterial roadways take into account buffered bike lanes. Section 300 is our storm drainage. We are currently using our 1984 design criteria manual. It's a little outdated, but rain is still rain and it still goes downhill. But in our update, we're looking to try and conform more to urban drainage flood control district standards. Now they're called Mile High Flood Control District. And we're working through that section. We've made modifications, and we're working through legal counsel right now to understand all the implications of going from a standalone design criteria manual to adding them into our to this document here. Some of those things that change are technical in nature. Mile High Flood District now is recommending or requiring that you use NOAA 14 Atlas rainfall data, which has been updated and verified for our area. We have updates to how they calculate rainfall, whether it be the rational method or the Colorado Urban Hydrograph, CUHP method. And then we're also looking at moving to what we call full spectrum detention, which in current design standards we control either a 10-year or 100-year storm. Now full spectrum allows you to control or better control the 0 to 10-year flows to better simulate historic flow rather than urbanized flow. We've added underdrain standards as well. In 2009, we brought forward ordinance changing the municipal code to add underdrain standards. Underdrains are private infrastructure that takes groundwater away from buildings, and we've never had a set standard for how those are supposed to be constructed. So we've added that into this section. Oh, and then the last one, our stormwater criteria currently calls for stormwater treatment for developments greater than an acre. If you disturb more than an acre, you need to implement some type of best management practices. In looking at what Envision Longmont allows now for construction or infill and redevelopment, we have neighborhoods that may have started at 50 to 60% impervious area, and as we densify that, we could be going up to 70, 80, 90%. So on small projects that are under an acre, we require them to look at low impact development or LID design to implement low impact development in their design to help reduce the amount of runoff and help control the water quality. Section 400 is our wastewater collection. Again, this is something that hasn't changed significantly in the way that we build our sanitary sewers, but we have changed our calculations when large developments come in, the way that we look at capacity and what type of demand will be put on our system. The bedding and installation details have changed, as well as conforming to some of the Colorado Department of Public Health and our NPDES permit requirements. Section 500 is our water distribution. Our water system is constructed mostly in conformance with American Water Works Association recommendations. Those have changed over time, so we've brought our, thank you. We've brought our system or our requirements up to meet those standards. We've also included backflow requirements. That's something that's implemented by the state and is put in place by our operations group. So they have minimum standards for new backflow in any services that are in buildings. And then one of the other technical pieces is restraint requirements. We've looked at underground to minimize the amount of movement of our water system and minimize breaks. We've looked at restraints on our pipe systems. So section 600 is our landscaping and irrigation section. Like I said before, we've removed what was the structures from this area and moved them into section 200. We've done some terminology changes to be in line with Envision Longmont. And then we've also looked at our raw water requirements for irrigation systems. Now systems that can be fed by raw water will need to be designed to that standard, even if they are fed by potable water at this point in time, so they can be changed in the future. We're also conforming to the wildlife management plan, and we've done an update of recommended plant material to be low water consuming. And then our last section is section 700, which is power and communications. We've added some specifications for small cell antenna requirements as we see more small cells coming into town. And then we've also revised some of our metering requirements in anticipation of the AMI coming forward. The one piece that was not included in the packet was the appendices in the design standards. Staff is still working on these. They're mostly checklists and plan requirements, things that you check off that say, we need this on a plan. You have to include this with your submittal. It's also report templates and checklists of how we want to see reports from our consultants and what information needs to be included. And then acceptance forms is for construction acceptance and final acceptance. That's our process to bring in whatever has been constructed. Now we own and maintain and operate that. There are some floodplain information items in there. And then our approved materials list is the list of everything that the city allows in each of our discipline areas. So our review process so far, in 2009 and 2012, staff attempted to do an update, but with workloads and with the flood in 2013, we weren't able to complete those. So we've taken all of that information and moved it forward. We created committees of engineers that had a staff engineer, had a senior engineer, also had members from our operations group and our construction inspectors that pulled together the original draft. That's gone for third-party review. We had Mueller Engineering look at the standards, as well as Confluent Design for our landscaping and irrigation. And they've given us comments back, and we've incorporated those into what you have. We also did board presentations. We took this to Transportation Advisory Board, to the Sustainability Board, and to Parks and Rec Board. And that brings us to tonight, to this presentation, and our next steps. We are still in legal consultation, and we'll be incorporating recommendations from legal counsel. And we hope to, we will complete the draft and ordinances and bring those back to City Council for first and second reading.
All right. Question time. You're first, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. My phone decided to go black, and I took notes on my phone, so hang on.
Can we go on to somebody else in the queue while we wait?
Sure.
All right, let's go ahead with Councilmember Peck. Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I have two questions. First of all, on the under drainage, I'm really glad to hear that we have that for new development, but do we have any consultation in the city for older homes that have, for example, when this wasn't a policy, for consultation on basements, flooding and stuff, because the drainage does not go away from, I've had questions from constituents about this, so.
Sure, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck. We're always open to take calls in Public Works Engineering Services. We do have Monica Bortolini as our drainage engineer, as well as other drainage engineers on staff that have gone to many homes and helped them with their recommendations or helped lead them to those that can help them with an ultimate design and reconfiguration of those.
Great, I'm glad to know that. And on the small cell, is that 5G?
You know, that's really outside of my area. I might have to have one of my friends from LPC talk to that. Looks like David Hornbacher's coming up.
Sorry about that. I was in the middle of another PowerPoint. So your question was about the 5G?
Yeah, the small cell technology that he was talking about, is that going to be 5G?
Yes. So you know, similar to other communities, city and county of Denver, for example, that a lot of these other organizations are promoting or moving forward with 5G. And so what we have in our standards and specifications is a combination street light pole. So if we do have a communications vendor coming to town, we can help reduce some of the clutter that we have on streets by combining some of those facilities rather than having just an exclusive communications pole and exclusive street light pole. And so that's trying to set the stage in advance rather than being sort of trying to play catch up on that.
So I do have, as all of us have had several emails, anti-5G. When we do this, I am going to ask that we have some kind of a public education, communication forum, so that they understand what the city's doing and why, and the consequences, or no consequences of it. That would be great.
So if I can answer that question, I think one of the things, if you remember, what's his name, Eugene? Ken Feldman, we brought him in to have that conversation. And so as we're getting some of those, what we want to do is have that presentation available to point folks to his presentation so they can get the answers to those questions. I think to David's point, there's two things also happening with the small cell. It's 5G, but they're also, I think, looking at it in certain areas in current cellular coverage where they have dead spots. So it's really both of those. It's a combination of two of those. But I would remind council, if you get those questions, refer them to the Ken Feldman presentation or to us, and we'll provide that to them. And then just remind everyone about the federal regulations that really guide what we can and can't do in that arena.
So is that presentation online presently?
I think it is. I can't tell you where it is, but we'll be able to send that out to you all and give you the exact location.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley, and sorry for the delay. I've just recently come to a realization of how much civil engineering materials science affects sustainability, so I'm going to have lots of questions. Bedding materials for roads, I understand that you have made a change. Can you explain why? I mean, I know you said that the old standard, there was only one standard, and it's harder and harder to get. What are the differences between the old stuff and the new stuff in terms of what it's made out of, its carbon footprint? It's, was that considered when you chose what to go into the standard, or was it just strictly commercial availability?
So Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Martin, bedding material is a a product that's produced in the rock quarries, and as you know, there is a carbon footprint associated with that. But it is taken into consideration in that it's really, there's an economic driver as well as a social, economic, or social and welfare driver to that, in that as long as we can get material that's close to us, then there's less transportation. So that is one of the things that goes into it, as well as local availability. The materials that we produce here are actually very high quality, and we would hate to have to go further east to get the rock and the bedding that we get right now, just for transportation reasons as well as for quality of the material itself.
Okay, that's a good reason. And is this, you know, again, a crushed rock like granite or something, as opposed to something that contains a tar component or something that contains a lime component? I mean, how inert is it?
So the bedding materials for pipes is what we were mostly talking about with the change, where we required CDOT number 6 prior, which is just a standard for the gradation of what size rocks are in there. There are no asphaltic components to it. It comes right out of the ground. It's crushed, and depending on what we're using it for, we like to have it either be more angular or more rounded. May want more fines in it in order for it to hold or have a greater cohesiveness. So there's some variation on what material we get, and it all depends on the application of it. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it kind of does. Probably enough for this purpose. Your LID standards for, and this is for surfacing of around buildings and so on, correct? Sidewalks?
Correct.
Okay. And does the new standard mean that for a specific area, more of the area has to be pervious?
What we're leaning back towards Volume 3 of Urban Drainage, which outlines LID processes and installations that you can use. So the whole intent is to disconnect impervious areas so that you don't have water that runs off of a roof down to on a concrete splash pan, down to a concrete driveway and out to a paved street. We want it to be able to run across something that's landscaped or porous, so it's going to be increasing the porosity or increasing the pervious area on development area.
Okay, switching completely, you talked about completing the water AMR system, I think. At one point, there was discussion of the radio associated with the AMR interoperating with the new backhaul for the electric smart meters, or combining among a single vendor or something. Is that out? Are the two systems going to remain separate going forward?
As far as I know, the AMR that we're installing right now, it does not take into account the AMI portion of electric meters.
That was one of the things I've asked them to look at, is try to see how we can avoid a duplication of technology. At the end of the day, you have a system that's being implemented, so that's sort of one of the challenges that I've sent their way.
Okay. So it's on the table, but it's by no means set in stone either way at this point. Okay, thank you. And then landscape, trending to low water consumption is a good thing. Did you also consider carbon sequestration, which is actually a suggestion that I have heard from residents several times in terms of the plant recommendations? Some plants just pull it out of the air a lot more heavily than others do.
So that's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, and so I may ask Steve Ransweiler to come up.
Yay, Steve.
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Martin, Steve Ransweiler, Project Manager, Public Works and Natural Resources. We did not consider that in the development standards. But the plant list is something that's always evolving. the Colorado State University Plant Select Program and other nurseries throughout the country are constantly coming up with new varieties of plants. And so our forester and other staff are constantly looking at new varieties of trees. And we update that list as often as we can, probably every couple, 3 years. And so that's something we can consider in the future. It was not with the standards.
That'd be a great thing. I think I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets that question. It came as a surprise to me that there was a recommended plants list, which is a beautiful thing. Is it online, or is it, I heard it once described as a notebook that the developers could come in and look at.
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Martin, no, and there's no notebook that I know of.
Okay.
It's buried in our approved materials list on the city website.
Okay.
We can probably do a better job of making that more available to the common homeowner as well as developers. So
You know what
we
you
can
could
look into
do is you could put a link to that in the tips on Engage Longmont for the climate emergency page, which has just come up this week. I'd really appreciate it if you'd do that.
We can look into having that done. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I know your children are not as appreciative of your work as they should be, but I do appreciate it, and I've learned a lot about under drains, cleanouts, and much more about manholes, which I am sorely lacking in information about. And I really appreciate the glossary and the list of acronyms, because that's enormously helpful for those of us who are not in that field. I wanted to mention that I'm on CML, and I know in the herbicide section, Colorado Municipal League is, this year, the state has a preemption on herbicides. It can't recommend any one herbicide over another. And there is a lot of movement, and hopefully it might change this year that cities can designate herbicides that they will be able to ban or use. So I just wanted to let you know that that's a possibility by the end of June. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. I want to go back to the 5G question, and I got the answer. I'll be curious to see what kind of regulations or requirements we can create based on what we heard from, is it Ken Feldman? But as we were going through that conversation, it occurred to me that wouldn't it be a reasonable ask of the Cable Trust to take that presentation, to send a note to us where to find it is one thing, but to scroll through a council meeting, to timestamp a council meeting, there aren't going to be many people going to go to YouTube and do that. Couldn't we have the Cable Trust just clip that presentation and post it somewhere on our website, the city's website? Because, like 2 days after that presentation was one of those emails. When are you going to do this? And, at least I could respond to say, well, 48 hours ago, we did, right? If you'd been at the meeting, you could have heard the presentation. And I didn't want to be flippant about it, but we continue to get the input, and it would really be nice to be able to respond to say, well, here is the presentation we had from an expert. It'll take you 18 minutes or whatever. Take a look. But that's the guidance that we're following. And if this presentation sparks more of that, then it would be even more useful to have a clip. And that isn't that what their mission is, partly? Yep. To say, yep, we'll give you the 12 or 18 or whatever minute in a really digestible video clip.
That's actually what, I didn't make it clear, but that's what I was thinking, is to strip everything out and just have that presentation.
All right, I guess I've only got one question. This might be a question for Dale or even Steve. I'm not sure. So I understand in your sewer sizing, right? I understand why you used Manning's equation, right? You had the flow rate, and you used velocity in the flow area to determine that. But what I don't understand is, in determining velocity, I can understand why you used hydraulic radius to the 2/3 power and then multiplied that by the square root of the channel slope, and then multiplied that by 1.49 over your Manning's roughness coefficient. But I'd really challenge the 1.49 in that particular equation. And I'm wondering where you guys came up with 1.49, because I read the packet, and I think your math's wrong. I'm just kidding. I'm making fun of my fellow council members. I don't care. I'm sure you're good on your math. Sure you're good on your math. I'm just wanted to impress at home. And you'll notice if you're, but my math was right, because I'm reading it out of your packet. All right, so anyway, Councilmember Finley, you have a question?
I have a question. I would just like to move that we direct staff to bring the proposed public infrastructure design standards and construction specifications forward for adoption as an ordinance with minor changes as directed by legal counsel.
I'll second that. We all seconded that unanimously. No, we'll go ahead and vote on that. All right, let's vote.
I do think you should have the mermaids in the storm drainage portion, though.
Next time.
That would be awesome. We'll name. All right. Good job, guys. Good work. Thank you. All right. Let's go on to mayor and council comments. Anyone? Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would just like to say that for the first time this winter, as part of our holiday observances, the organization Wreaths Across America is coming to Longmont and is raising money to put wreaths on the graves of veterans in Mountain View Cemetery. The American Legion Post 32 is gathering contributions and volunteers. So if anyone is interested in doing either, you can contact Jen at the American Legion Post offices and find out more about it.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was walking down 3rd Street today, a few days ago, and was talking to a delightful fellow who lives near the golf course. And so I wanted to give Mr. Angstad some good feedback, because sometimes you don't hear any good feedback. I said, how do you think the traffic has been lately on 3rd? And he said, I think it's getting a lot better, and that's because of the sign that you guys put down, so that when people come tearing off of Hover at 45 miles an hour, they don't keep going up 3rd Avenue at 45 miles an hour, which they were doing. And also because the bicycle lanes are in there, and that signals people visually that, okay, you can't just flop all over the road and race down the road. So those two things have been very, very helpful, and he was really happy that you've finished paving the road and put the bike lane in and put the sign in. So thanks.
All right, nobody else is in the queue, so let's move on to city manager remarks. Anything?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Cool. City attorney remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, let's go ahead, and this meeting is adjourned.